We have a quote here. If you want to read the quote, and then we'll...
Sure. The more successful the villain, the more successful the picture.
Okay, any thoughts on who said that?
I don't know.
No. Okay, interesting. I thought maybe
No.
you would know just because...
Is it Hitchcock or something?
there
It
you
is?
go.
Okay,
Ding,
that
ding,
was my
ding.
best
And
guess.
tell him what he's won. Okay. So what are your thoughts in relation to Hitchcock's films?
I love Hitchcock's films. I think, he masterfully crafts stories in a way that celebrate themes and ideas that go beyond just the plot and the character, while also having really interesting characters, having great suspense, and so on. In terms of the quote, I think it's absolutely true that the villains are really should be the most interesting character in a movie. I think that actually is the case, because if you want a good movie, you need to be able to understand the perspectives of all the different characters. So if there's a villain in the movie, I think a good movie, the villain is not just like a pure force of evil. It's not just like, oh, there's some malevolent force and there's the person fighting it who's the kind of the hero of it. You want to be able to understand from the perspective of the villain, they're the hero in their story, right? That's people always say that. And I think that is really, really absolutely true. And that you need, as a viewer, as a creator, if you're making a film, you need to be able to understand, get in the mindset of every kind of major character in the film and understand why they're doing what they're doing. What is the purpose of what they're doing? What is their goal? And so on.
What is your favorite Alfred Hitchcock film?
So I love so many of his films. I mean, it's hard, it's hard to pick one. I'm gonna say one that I think is most underrated, maybe, and that's the film Stage Fright. And the reason I love that film is because it messes around with what your expectations are narratively. So it sort of tells a story, and you kind of find yourself looking at the perspectives of the different characters, because they're really interesting characters. I love Marlene Dietrich is one of my favorite actors ever, and she's so good in that movie. And I don't want to spoil exactly what happens in it, but she's such an interesting character, and your relationship to her really changes as you go throughout the film. And it really is one of the rare films that gets to the end. I guess it has a twist, but it's not really just a twist, because many twists are interesting or fun, but it's a twist that really changed my whole perspective on the film. It really flipped my entire understanding of the film, my entire understanding of like how I related to the characters, how I empathize with the characters, and I love the experience of watching it.
Do you think the viewer should almost have a hint of empathy toward the villain to really put it over the top?
Absolutely, yeah. I think again, the best films have work where you can really understand the perspective of the villain, and maybe you don't agree with what they're doing. I think that might be a hard thing to accomplish in every film. But yeah, if you can empathize with them and understand why they're doing what they're doing, and even think that they're right in some sense, that there's something about what they're doing that's right, I think that makes a really powerful film. And I don't really love like superhero films, for example. I'm not a big fan, but I thought the Black Panther movie was really incredible, because Killmonger, the villain in that, the whole time you're like, this guy is right. It's really, and I think it's sort of a metaphor for the Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, like the approaches to accomplishing what you want to. One sort of using kind of peaceful resistance, and one maybe advocating for something that's a little more active or potentially violent. I know that's an exaggeration for Malcolm X. I don't think he was really violent necessarily. But if you look at the two characters in that, they're both correct. And at the end of the film, the villain is defeated, but the hero actually learns from the villain's perspective and changes his own perspective. And that, to me, is like a really a successful form of storytelling, and a successful character arc for the hero, because the hero doesn't just triumph. The hero, in fact, is sad at the end when the villain dies off, and has absorbed some of the ideas of the villain in a way that's kind of a compromise of everything, and that is maybe the most productive approach to it. And I think that that's a really it's a fascinating movie. I think it's a really fascinating movie.
With Hitchcock's Stage Fright, how many times have you watched it?
Probably 4 or 5. So I've seen some of his other movies. I've probably seen Rear Window, 15 times. I've probably seen North by Northwest 20 times. But Stage Fright is it just because of that story structure. It sticks with me. It's less of a movie that I maybe will. Some of the other movies I might revisit more because they're more fun and immersive as an experience. Like Rear Window, I find just to be the characters, especially, just such a fun experience to hang out with those characters and to spend time with them and to see the kind of like mischief that Grace Kelly is approaching the whole thing with. And so maybe maybe there are different types of experiences with Hitchcock films that work in different ways.
How does Alfred Hitchcock build suspense?
I think one of his main strategies for building suspense is to tell the audience something that the characters don't know. So it's a lot of times people take the other approach where nobody knows anything, right? There's different kind of strategies to it. So Hitchcock will the example that is always given is I think it's The Man Who Knew Too Much. I can't remember for sure, but there's like a bomb under the table, and the audience sees the bomb. We know it's ticking down, from 1 minute to 0. And the characters are just having a little chat. They have no idea what's happening. And the tension is building because we know, time is moving. We're watching the characters and we're like, we want to scream at the screen, get out of there, something. And so I think that's a really brilliant strategy, to tell the audience something that the characters don't know. I love that.
How old were you when you saw your first Hitchcock film?
Oh boy, I think I want to say I saw Psycho at like 8 or 9, something like that.
And how was it for you as a little boy to see it? And
I thought it was scary, of course, but no, I loved it. I thought it was a fun movie to watch, and there's something just. I mean, it's such a. People don't even quite realize now how much Hitchcock used these sort of Freudian and these kind of ideas of perversion that are really tied to like classical psychology, and I think it's easy to respond to those ideas. They're sort of ingrained in society in a way that we respond quickly to them. Even little kids, I think, can respond quickly to them. And that maybe speaks to some of his successes. I don't know if some of those things would work now as we've evolved a little bit. We view psychological ideas differently, in the modern. So I wonder if kids now, if an 8-year-old now watched Psycho, they'd probably just be like, this is boring and it's in black and white. What's going on?
well, he had his own issues that he dealt with, and I think it came out on screen, but in many fascinating ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Why do you think his work will stand the test of time? Even maybe, maybe not an 8-year-old today, but as a would-be auteur in film school.
Yeah, I mean, I think his films are just, they just have so many aspects that work. I mean, not every film is great, but I would say an unbelievable percentage of his films are great. And, he had great casts. He found great actors to do what he wanted. And he wasn't particularly fond of actors, I think. If you hear quotes from him talking about actors, he sort of viewed them as puppets. And he's like, why do I have to deal with these people? I just say the line, stand in the place, do the thing. He didn't. I don't think he really liked directing actors, but he hired incredible people who were able to convey those stories. And I think his best skill was picking stories. I think he chose short stories. He chose novels and other things to adapt or have somebody adapt. And I think he was just brilliant at choosing those stories that would work in a film context.
So he was sort of like a British version of maybe Rod Serling.
Yeah, absolutely. Same kind of idea where it's like, he's taking from great source material, and again, bringing in great actors and, presenting stories in a way that I think connect with people. And I think, Twilight Zone, I mean, I think it's still, it's hard for me to judge it objectively, but when I watch, old Twilight Zone, it still all really works for me. And when I watch new Twilight Zone, it's the stories aren't that good. They're not the same kind of sourcing that I think was done at that time. And I think people don't realize how important the source material is to the success of those stories.
Do you think it has anything to do with the pacing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something about Hitchcock where he revels in the moment. He takes his time and lets the moments sit in many places. And I think that really it only works because of great actors and excellent cinematography, excellent structure. But I think really the actors are what hold it together. They're so compelling and charming that I think you're willing to sit with them. You want, like, Rear Window. I love the movie, but I would just, if you gave me a 8-hour movie just hanging out with Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly, I would watch that. I would love that. That would be fun for me. So I think to be able to create an environment like that and have a cast like that, and then to tell a story on top of that using that cast is just an amazing way to kind of build out and structure a movie.